Hello all, this is the Owl. Before we start, I just want to... You were expecting a jump scare, weren't you? Nah, I actually wanted to give a special FrightRanker shout-owl. I mean, owl out. No, that sounds like bird repellent. What am I doing with my life? Shout out to another content creator, Rinku, who's been having a bit of a tough time of it as of late. He streams a variety of content, does damned fine work, and is also just a really great chap who could do with some cheering up. Now, he is also going to be starting a playthrough of Condemned shortly, at my suggestion, as this is the game we'll be doing next year to break up the manga stuff. And as he's apparently never played a horror game before, this should be really fun to watch. Although perhaps the correct term would be schadenfreude-tastic. I am certainly going to be watching myself. Go and check out his YouTube channel or his Twitch, both of which are linked in the description. And, leave him a friendly comment and hassle him to play Condemned if he doesn't start soon. All links, once again, are in the description and... Oh, that's where I left that jump scare. Was looking for it all morning. So, where were we? Oh right, last time we started out on Masaaki Nakayama's horror magnum opus, which I've often described as the scariest manga ever written. PTSD Radio is not only really great, both in terms of the art and the scares, but is also, allegedly, a literally cursed manga to a degree that aspiring creepypasta writers can only dream of, that had to be abandoned by its creators before it basically killed them, like it killed their publishing magazine. We met Chifuyu and Keita, two young adults who, in their youth, had encounters with an eerie supernatural creature referred to by the wonderfully unsettling term the God of Hair, or Gushi-sama, after Chifuyu starts having visits from a nocturnal hair-pulling poltergeist, as well as horrific hallucinations of a distorted version of her own face. She returns the curse, or whatever it was, to Keita. On top of this, some sort of evil force is beginning to make its presence known in Tokyo, and it may have a connection to an ancient tale of a malevolent rural deity, a bullied child, a samurai, and a murdered prostitute, and yeah, as I said last time, this is not so much a coherent story as a collection of vignettes tied together by themes and a very vague, overarching narrative. It jumps around in time a lot, and it never bothers to explain anything unless that explanation contradicts something else or makes things even more confusing. So, as we go through, we'll attempt to put the pieces together. Oh yeah, I would strongly recommend checking out part 1, which is also linked in the description, or else you're going to be even more lost. Now, keep in mind that a lot of this is going to be guesswork, both due to how frigging confusing this manga can be, and also because a lot of characters look similar and are seldom helpfully referred to by name. Once we're done though, I do plan on going back and trying to figure out exactly what the hell is going on. And yes, I know, That's going to be like trying to take sugar out of your tea after making a cup. Regardless, with that out of the way, as the evil things start to gather, let's climb back down into the darkness. For our first vignette of the day, we join two random characters who head to a local cafe and of course choose the smoking section. Yeah, I'm not going into this as YouTube isn't really the biggest fan of cigarettes, considering nicotine to be one step down from black tar heroin, but all I'll say is that in Japan, maybe 4 in 5 people between the ages of 18 and 80 smoke. Ciggies are cheap, and if you aren't a fan of the smell, you're going to struggle to survive in Japan. Hell, they make a special spray that you can use so you don't go back into the office fugging of cigarette smoke. Inside the cafe, they find a depressed-looking man with a very odd haircut, resembling a manga samurai. Not the actual samurai haircut, which makes you look like you've been cultivating male pattern baldness since you were 13. Only on closer inspection, something is badly wrong here. I can't really do it justice in this dumb little video, but Nakayama likes to do the ONE thing, where certain impactful sequences are drawn as if they were animation frames. It's actually really dope, and wow, that is creepy. Okay. So, this was the freaky-ass woman who I think it was Keita was seeing in his apartment, and maybe the implication here is that this is the dead prostitute from the story, who seems to have, I'm honestly not sure if this guy is supposed to be the samurai, or if he's just some rando. He may also be a character that we meet later, earlier. Bollocks to it, as I said, confusing manga, but I'm not sure about that. I don't think it's terribly important. Still, a damned creepy little vignette, and as we see the crows beginning to circle around the idol of Oguchi-sama, Volume 2 draws to a close. Volume 3 opens with what appears to be a burn victim, clad in bandages, but when some douchey drunks start hassling him, he turns around. So, okay, I guess you're feeling sick because you're full of hair. Bah! Over to Keita, who's seeing creepy things in his mirror, much like Chifuyu did, although hers were actually scary, and yours looks like a melting E.T. figurine. Back in the past, one of the young kids who found the box, remember with that doll head thing and the masses of hair, has been seeing a shadowy figure following him, only this time it followed him home. The implication is that it's the thing from the box, who I'm going to hazard a guess and say that this is what Oguchi-sama actually looks like. Or maybe it's just ye old possessed doll or something else. Once again, who the hell knows? It doesn't really matter. Regardless, he and his friends go to talk to their local priest, who seems to have at least a passing familiarity with this dark entity, performing a similar ritual to the one Chifuyu and I think also Keita's family used to, shaving the kids' heads and hanging shears up above the door before telling them that they need to spend the night in the temple and absolutely not to go outside or open the door to anyone. That night, they hear the priest chanting the warding prayer, and as the night drags on, they see a silhouette peering through the paper door at them. Then the shears begin to snip. Crikey Moses, that is terrifying. Oguchi-sama drops down and stares at them from under the door, furious that they've gotten away. Yep, you bunch are going to be putting some therapist's kid through college. Rah! Our next vignette is a weird one, in that it's split over 3 parts, each part showing the same event from a different perspective. Damn it, Nakayama, this thing is already confusing enough. Keita and his mates are out one night when they start hearing something slithering up the large staircase towards them. Suddenly, both friends start screaming. We'll only see what's happening later though. And yes, this entire sequence feels almost experimental. The next vignette, keep in mind, once again, a lot of this is guesswork, is a man who I think was the samurai-looking dude from earlier, only this is before he had the ghost on his back. He's riding on a train and being sort of harassed by another weird-looking woman who apparently only he can see. This is another theme that Nakayama likes. A random person who is very clearly off, not wanting to leave you alone after you get their attention. I'm not sure if this is the same creepy face woman or what this thing is, but it's certainly unsettling. Back over to Keita's group, we see that the other 2 characters were screaming because where Keita only heard slithering sounds, they heard a sepulchral voice screaming, "I found you, sir." After a few more vignettes, including one really gross one, where a sleeping character suddenly feels something climb into his mouth. Bah! He bites it and then spits out a bloody clump of hair that turns into this spindly ball of hell no. Back over with Keita's group again, we finally see what they actually saw. The screaming figure scampers up the stairs. Oh, it's this thing from the classroom earlier. The eyeless spoopy with the screwed up mouth. Yeah, it's a wonderfully nasty design, but I have no idea what's going on. We cut back to the past and get a pretty interesting clue. Well, sort of, as to what the sodding hell Oguchi-sama is. I think the priest we saw helping the kids is discussing something with the other villagers that turns out to be the Oguchi-sama idol, the land they set aside for it, and the rituals they perform to appease it. The villagers want to destroy the idol, use the land for farming, and stop it with the ancient traditions, as they are worried that the modernizing world outside will see them as credulous, superstitious bumpkins. But the priest tells them not to mess with that thing, as it's bad news. But in their discussion, something rather interesting comes up, And again, I am relying on the official translation here. I'm not sure what the Japanese says, but the villagers describe it as an Aboriginal deity. Ah, okay. Now, if this translation is correct, I am going to place the village in Tohoku, maybe Hokkaido, and I think they're referring to the Ainu, Aboriginal peoples, indigenous to Japan who, yeah, we're not going too far into the Ainu today, as it's A, very complicated issue, and B, really depressing. In a nutshell though, native to the northern regions of the area, in particular, once again, Tohoku and Hokkaido, and I guess some parts of Russia, the Ainu were nearly wiped out during the Japanese expansionist period. Most of the rest were forcibly assimilated, and those that remained did not have a good time of it. It was only in 2019 that the Ainu were officially recognized as a native people distinct from the Japanese, with a right to their own identity and traditions. But it's still a very contentious issue, as Japan prides itself on being both ethnically and culturally homogeneous. The Ainu actually do pop up in a variety of media if you're paying attention, particularly manga. Blade of the Immortal immediately comes to mind, as they have multiple Ainu characters, and Tokyo Ghoul makes numerous references to the Ainu, which actually makes sense in context, but we'll save that discussion for when we get around to Tokyo Ghoul. The relevancy here to PTSD Radio is in spirituality. Depending on who you ask, Shinto and the paganistic Ainu beliefs are very similar, with some anthropologists believing them both to have a common origin. And looking into it some more, yeah, many of the rituals are bloody nearly identical. But I'll warn you right now, this is not something you should ask your Japanese friends about, unless you really don't want Japanese friends anymore. Very contentious, very divisive issue. Ainu believe in kamui, which is believed to be where the Japanese term for gods come from, kami, kamui, and yes, I am sure I'm mangling the pronunciation, aren't just what Kakashi calls that crazy eye ability. These are spiritual beings bound to a specific domain, such as the spirit of a local river, the spirit of a certain forest, or even a certain tree or mountain, which, and this is also interesting, bears a strong resemblance to the ancient Roman belief in lares and penates, small gods with the same sort of nature and specific domain, often worshipped by a single family or single town. Yeah, this shit is bananas, but also fascinating when you look into it. Of course, I may be running too far with this premise, but the implication might be that Ogushi-sama is actually an ancient Ainu kamui, a deity of, well, hair or something. Anyways, enough wibbly-woo. Despite the priest's warning, the villagers decide to go ahead anyway, setting out to destroy the idol, and suddenly one of them is struck dead, I think with his veins filling with hair, as everyone else looks on in horror. Oh, and the idol is emitting an evil, visible aura. Yeah, forget the statue. I think you might need a new village, chaps. The next little bit is another wonderfully ominous chunk of storytelling that Man, the chronology of this manga is so confusing, as this feels like it should have been the very first vignette. You know, the thing you open the story with. We rejoin, let's say Keita, and meet another of his friends, Hibino. This dump truck face. Hang on, is he supposed to be the samurai? No, I have no bloody idea. Anyway, at an undetermined time, Keita narrates, and we learn that Hibino is a precognitive who can always predict death and disaster. According to him, he can see auras and figures above buildings. If one of these turns upside down, there is an extremely high probability of a death occurring. However, one day, Hibino tells Keita, once again, I don't know if this is Keita, it doesn't matter, that he quit his job and was moving. Why? Well, we see from Hibino's perspective that every one of these figures in Tokyo has suddenly turned upside down. Uh-oh. Over to Chifuyu. Oh, hi Ducky, it's been a minute. Who's working late? While walking the deserted halls of her office building, she gets the sense that she's being followed. She tries to tell herself that it's just her imagination, but as the feeling of being followed continues, she finally loses her nerve and says, "Bugger it, home time." Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. We then see the bandaged figure from earlier, who I think is supposed to be Hamaguchi, that weird-looking bullied kid from Volume 1, who, what the hell, seems to be inhaling a whole bunch of hair from the idol. So this was before what we saw earlier? I don't know. Well, I guess we've already established that Oguchi-sama was used to curse people. I'm still not sure, but I think that's the prostitute doing the cursing, who later became this thing. So I wonder if Hamaguchi has been doing the same cursy-wursy stuff to get back at his tormentors from school. And speaking of the bullies, we see one of them from back then, now a grown man, called Kono. The other three all went insane, became more and more obsessed with Oguchi-sama, and proceeded to top themselves. After the funeral of the last surviving member but him, Sakai, who jumped off a building, Kono goes with another chap to said building, revealing that this bit is actually a recontextualization of another story from the start of the manga. I get it, or rather I absolutely do not get it. This manga, man. Kono then claims to have had an epiphany, saying that Oguchi-sama pulled him off the building somehow. His friend has no bloody idea what he's talking about, but when they look down, they see, oh hell no, but are able to narrowly avoid it, leaving Kono covered in hair and basically catatonic, down on the streets below. Yeah, this is Hamaguchi's doing. Dude, these kids were asses, but you gotta let this one go already. Our last vignette of Volume 3 seems not to tie into anything else yet, but we see a man being woken up by the sound of water dripping. He gets up and begins to explore his house, turning the lights on, trying to identify the source of the drip, drip, drip noise. He checks all the taps and faucets, then calls it a night and turns off the light. As he leaves the bathroom, he hears the dripping sound again, this time coming from right behind him. He turns and sees that it's coming from the shower. He steps forwards, pulls back the curtain. Welp, that is frigging terrifying. A drowned, bloated corpse is standing upright. Yeah, have fun taking your shower tonight, folks. And I have to wonder if this vignette is a reference to my absolute favorite campfire story of all time, the Drip 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 story, which, according to my Discord, also appears in JoJo. And yeah, the Drip 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 story is often regarded as the scariest campfire story of all time. It's got a ton of variations, and hell, I heard this one in South Africa when I was a kiddo, so it's clearly done the rounds. Anyway, that was Volume 3, and the rest of Volume 2. This manga manages to be as confusing as it is pants-shittingly terrifying, and this only gets worse as it goes on. For that though, you'll have to wait until next time. Before we finish for the day, I want to give a huge thanks, as always, to my fantastic patrons: Asterix Gaming, Cheerful Satanist, Starwin Marwin, High Lord J, Jacob Ramsey, Crazy, Kel Core, Lance Goebel, Paul Norberger, Piece of Yeast, Rafferty, Robert Dote, and XTC Pill. If you want to hear me say your name, and also, help Mrs. Owl and I pay the bills, and ensure that we can keep on doing what we do, why not take a look at our Patreon? You'll also get some fun perks on the Discord, as well as early access to most of my videos. If you want to see more like this, why not stick around, subscribe, bell, you know the drill. Oh right, Discord, Patreon, and Rinku's links are in the description. Cheers my friends, and take care. This is the Owl, signing off.